The Washington Commanders signing Michael Gallup was underwhelming, but was it necessary? And is Stephon Diggs the answer at wide receiver? Come on, let's talk about it next on Washington Football Maniacs. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Brandon Scott again. And before we get into today's content, first, if you're not a member of the Washington Football Maniacs, definitely consider becoming a member because we are putting a lot of good content out there. And like I said, we are in the middle of the offseason, getting closer to the draft. So anything when it comes to draft prospects, and scouting reports, definitely tune in here at Washington Football Maniacs. So let's get into today's content. Michael Gallup is now at Washington Commander, coming out of retirement, but underwhelming move. And was it necessary? Could we have added a receiver in the draft? And Stephon Diggs, could he be the answer? Question mark. Let's talk about it. So, Michael Gallup, he is now Washington Commander. So, what is my reaction to the deal and where does he fit in on this roster in this wide receiver room? So, I mean, it's okay. I mean, it adds depth to the wide receiver position, but to me, it's a lateral move. And like I said, I'm a big supporter of Adam Peters. I'm a big supporter of the team, obviously. I think we're definitely heading in the right direction, checking all the right boxes. Rejuvenated franchise, new owner, new GM, new coaching staff. I mean, the whole nine franchise quarterback. Come on now. I mean, we have a real chance to be a really good team, if not a championship team. And that's something we have not been able to say for 20-something years. So to me, it was an underwhelming move. Michael Gallup, I mean, if you look at his stat line, his best season was in 2019, where he had 66 receptions for 1,107 yards and 6 touchdowns. But since then, he did have 843 yards in 2020. But since then, man, 3 years from 2021 to 2023, he averaged around 450 yards receiving. So underwhelming. A guy where can he really be that compliment on the other side of Scary Terry? No. Obviously, with Deebo Samuel, for right now, it looks like Deebo Samuel is going to be playing opposite of Scary Terry, and Noah Brown might be in the slot, or it could be flip flop. You could probably see a more realistic option of Noah Brown being the number 2 like he was last year, and Deebo Samuel being that Swiss Army knife out of the slot. Because look, Deebo could play outside, could play inside, so a lot of options. But where does Michael Gallup fit in? Well, he's looking like he's probably going to be a 4th receiver, which I think is not a bad spot. I mean, Luke McCaffrey, I think he's still very, very raw, even though he does have a lot of potential at the wide receiver position. KJ Osborne, again, more of a depth guy, not a guy you really look at as being a starter, but a guy who can definitely step in the event of injury. So right now, it looks like obviously Scary Terry number 1, Deebo Samuel number 2, or in the slot. It really depends on where they want to put him. And Noah Brown can play the number 2. So that is your top 3 wide receivers. So Michael Gallup is with a depth piece. And like I said, it's not a long-term commitment in Washington. And, in the event of injury, can he step in and play? Absolutely. But he's not a guy who is a starter right now. And let's be totally honest about that. So like I said, underwhelming, in my opinion. Not a flashy move. And like I said, this a lot of people are saying this was kind of an underwhelming offseason. I agree, disagree. I mean, Deebo Samuel, we already kind of talked about on this channel, can be a Super Bowl move, but it is slightly risky because he has had a dip in production. And is he going to show up to training camp in top shape? That is a question, but there's not a long-term commitment here. It can be if he plays up the stuff, but if he doesn't, they can just go ahead and cut sling load and call it quits. And then obviously the Tunzel was the star of the show, that key acquisition of the all season. So underwhelming, I would say underwhelming, but more strategic when you look at the fact that Adam Peters does not go, he very rarely does he go into a 3-year contract. Mostly he's a 1-2-year deal. So, he's been it known that he's going to build through the draft, supplement through free agency. And yes, we gave up some draft capital, but look, we still are in a position to get some high impact guys in the draft coming up, man, especially wide receivers, potentially cornerback. The list goes on. So Michael Gallup, underwhelming. Was it necessary? Like I said, it's not a long-term commitment, but we shall see. Stephon Diggs is the next question. Is he the answer? Right now, they say he is progressing very rapidly coming back from an ACL injury. So he did have a meeting with the New England Patriots. A lot of people are saying, could he be an option opposite Scary Terry? Now, 3 years ago, if you look at a potential top, starting wide receiver core of Scary Terry, Stephon Diggs, and Deebo Samuel in Washington, you would probably gasp for air. You wouldn't believe what you're saying, man. I mean, that 3 years ago, that would have been a really good wide receiver room. That would have been a Super Bowl wide receiver room, man. But obviously, Stephon Diggs, 31 years old, coming off of that ACL injury, and with a guy, when you look at speed guys, ACL, it's not a death sentence like it used to be, where your career is definitely over or you're not that same player. But there's still question marks whether you can be the same player. The start of advancements when it comes to ACL injuries, and really getting guys to somewhat closer, to replicate the production he had before the injury. But like I said, with a speed guy, you just never know. And like I said, he's very productive. Best year you could argue was 2020 with the Buffalo Bills, but from 2018 to 2023, he was 1,000-yard receiver. And when you look at touchdowns, boom, he was averaging around 7 to 10. So like I said, his come up years were obviously his first 3 years in Minnesota. But he's a guy who produced. He's definitely a top option in Minnesota and in Buffalo. He's a speedster, good hands, good route runner. I mean, he would be a solid addition, but here's the thing, red flags come up. And that's the biggest thing is, has he had his issues on and off the field to a certain degree, and had his own fair share of locker room issues? Absolutely. Do I think to a certain degree, my concern is locker room. I don't want to mess with the culture. That's my biggest thing, is that I don't want anything to really be a detriment to this culture, because there is a good culture with this team from the top down, from ownership down to the coaching staff to the locker room. There is a good culture in DC, and you want good vibes around Jaden Daniels. You want guys who, if they're going to be a veteran piece, are going to be guys who are going to lead by example. And he's had his issues in the locker room. Now, saying that, and it is a big concern for me, saying that, I wouldn't have a problem with them making this move, because it would probably be a one-year deal. And again, kind of like Deebo Samuel, if he doesn't play up to the level of production that you expect, then you can just cut Sling Logan, call it a day. With Stephon Diggs, if he's shown that he can be that guy, then why not? Because Noah Brown, I think, is a safe option. He's just definitely a safe option. At number 2, he did well. But Stephon Diggs, if you can add that level of talent, and again, it goes back to what kind of player are you getting? So is it risky? Yes. But again, if you look at the depth of this team, and like I said, we're about to get into the depth charts. They do have, to me, you still add a receiver in the draft, man. You definitely add more depth. Nothing against KJ Osborne, Luke McCaffrey. Like I said, it's still relatively raw. I mean, he was just, he was a quarterback not too long ago. So, he's still, like I said, you see the potential with him, the wide receiver, but he's not ready to be a starter yet. So I wouldn't be against it. Like I said, I have big reservations to a certain degree with the locker room stuff, with the off the field stuff. Him having issues in Minnesota, him having issues in Buffalo, clash with the quarterback at times, clash with the front office at times. So, but here's my thing, and the reason why I say that I wouldn't be totally upset with it, because I have all the faith in the world for Adam Peters and Dan Quinn to kind of work with him and kind of set parameters with him and set a standard for him. I think that Dan Quinn has a hard-nosed approach. He has the kind of the hard-nosed aura about him. And I think that he will be a guy to be like, look, man, if you want to be here, this is the standard. Because look, if you look at the locker room, if you look at the culture, if you look at the vibe, the chemistry in the in the locker room, man, they're building something special here. And I don't want anything to mess with that. And like I said, he's had his fair share of issues, but here's the thing. I do think that Dan Quinn has that amount of authority. It has that hard-nosed approach that he's going to be like, look, man, this is what we're trying to do here. If you want to be part of it, cool. If not, kick rocks. So, like I said, he has the talent, but there's a lot of question marks with character to a certain degree. I'm not going to try to bash him too much character-wise, but let's be real. He does have a resume of having issues in the locker room and off the field. So, not going to hammer him too much on that, but it is still there. So, like I said, if you don't want to be judged, shouldn't have did it. So here's my, I think that if they could definitely set some parameters with him, he could, and he shows that he can still be a very productive speedster in some kind, in an outside weapon, opposite scary Terry. I would be in favor, but it would have to be a 1-year contract. So you guys get in the comment section, let us know. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree on both Stephon Diggs and Michael Gallup in my take tonight? All right, let's take a quick look at the wide receiver depth chart at wide receiver. And we can also look at some other areas to kind of look at in the draft when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. And obviously getting close to the draft, we're going to get into draft prospects and needs heading into the 2025 NFL draft. So looking at wide receiver, obviously scary Terry number 1. Deebo Samuel, they got him number 2, but I think he's definitely probably going to be in the inside. I think definitely going to be that Swiss Army knife for Cliff Kingsbury. So, like I said, Noah Brown has shown that he could be the number 2 for right now. unless they make an upgrade or an additional move. Number 4, looking at getting Michael Gallup. Number 5, Luke McCaffrey. And number 6, KJ Osborne. And they have Chris Moore on here. To me, he's probably looking like a practice squad guy. I would not be against them adding another receiver or two in the draft, man. Definitely add more depth because, again, you don't know what you're really going to get from Debo. Look, all pro talent. You don't know what you're going to get from him. And if you add stuff on Diggs, you definitely need to add more depth at wide receivers. So, looking at some other areas, trying to look at Brian Robinson has not hit 1,000 yards yet, man. So they're looking for an upgrade. So obviously he's that bruiser. He's that guy who's definitely lower shorter pads and get those additional yards, man. But is he that number one running back that every down back? They may look for an upgrade in the draft, and I think they should. Also, Eckler definitely at the at the running back position. He's definitely again another Swiss Army knife, a guy who can definitely get active in other areas on the offense. But again, he is not a spring chicken anymore, man. He's definitely getting in on age, man, and effectiveness. So adding in a running back should definitely be a target. And tight end, Zach Ertz coming back, not a long-term deal. John Bates, the blocking tight end, and Ben Sinnott looks like he's going to be the long-term option. But look, I'm not against adding a piece in the draft there. So like I said, we'll take a look at the defensive side in future videos and get into some draft prospects and where are the needs going into the 2025 NFL draft. So looking at the line real quick, guys, like I said, to me, the key acquisition was Laramie Tunsil at left tackle. But right now they have Nick Allegretti at left guard, Tyler Biadasz at center. And right now it appears it could be Brandon Coleman at right guard or left guard. So right now I think Brandon Coleman is definitely going to come inside on the line. And Angie Wiley on the outside opposite Tunsil at right tackle. So looking at the depth, I mean, there's intriguing guys here. Nick Harrisburg is definitely intriguing. Michael Dieters. But again, kind of like the other areas, I'm not opposed to adding more depth in the draft. So, all right, guys, I'll go ahead and call it a night. So let us know what you think. Do you agree or disagree in the comment section? Everybody, hail to the Commanders, and peace. See you guys next time.